They thought it would be funny to put me on the calendar like that. April Fool's Day. The poster on the break room board read in thick blue letters, "Farewell, Richard, April 1st, 6 p.m. Conference Hall." Someone had drawn a crooked smiley face beside my name. Someone else had tacked a paper clown hat above the R in Richard. People laughed when they walked by. A few said, "Oh, fitting, isn't it?" As if the date itself was some cosmic joke. As if 64 years of living and 40 years of working could be wrapped into a gag. My name is Richard Hale, I'm 64, and after 4 decades at the company, this is how they thought to end it, with a joke on the calendar. Sit back and let me tell you how they tried to make my life a punchline, and how one announcement I made turned the whole room cold. Before we get too far, don't forget to subscribe and let me know where you're listening from. I stood in front of the board the day I first saw it. The room smelled like burnt coffee and copier ink. Laughter trickled out from the hall. A young associate walked by, tapped the poster, and grinned at me. "April Fools, Mr. Hale. Guess they'll finally get you, huh?" I didn't answer. My fingers brushed the thumbtack. The paper felt cheap, thin, disposable. I'd given this place 40 years. Built entire systems by hand back when computer meant a loud gray box in a locked room. I trained half the people in this building. But on April 1st, they wanted to clap me out like a clown leaving the circus. That night, I sat alone in my office, the lights low, listening to the hum of the vending machine outside the door. A box of old files sat open on my desk. My hand rested on the corner of a folder I hadn't opened in years. Inside, it was a collection of things people thought I'd forgotten. Emails, receipts, copies of memos no one believed I saved. I didn't touch them yet, not then. I only looked. The next morning, the jokes started early. "Careful, Rich," a manager called as I poured coffee. "We might swap your cream with glue on the big day." 2 interns laughed, their teeth flashing too white. I stirred the coffee slowly. The spoon tapped the mug. "Good one," I said flatly. They thought the tone was part of the joke. By lunch, the whispers had turned louder. "Isn't it perfect?" one said in the elevator. "The man's a relic, and he retires on April Fools. You can't script it better." They thought it was chance. They didn't know it was deliberate. I learned later that Martin, the VP, had picked the date himself. He liked the symbolism, he told someone over drinks. "The old man's a fool for hanging on so long. We'll send him off proper." That line reached me within a day. This building leaks like a cracked pipe. I went home that night and sat at my kitchen table, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. I wrote one line on a yellow pad. "They want a fool." Then, under it, another. "Show them one." The days crawled toward April, each one layered with new humiliations. HR sent an email. "Retirement send-off. Casual dress. Jokes welcome. Bring your best roast of Richard. Bring your best roast." As if my life, my work, my late nights and early mornings were a pig on a spit for them to carve at. I pictured the young ones standing with drinks, trading barbs, turning my name into something to laugh at for sport. Even the invitations carried mockery. Someone added a gif of a clown tripping on stilts. Someone else replied, all with a meme of a gravestone reading, "Here lies Richard, the man who still uses fax." I deleted the thread, but not before saving copies. I never delete the things people think vanish. That weekend, I cleaned my garage. The air smelled of oil and dust. In the corner sat a locked box. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were 3 old binders, heavy with documents, contracts, old drafts of deals Martin himself had signed. Deals with dates that didn't match the reports he bragged about. Deals that showed just how far he bent the truth to climb. I slid one binder out and wiped the dust from the cover. My fingers lingered on the title, Q4 2007. I remembered that winter. I remembered the layoffs, the faces of people told there was no budget. I also remembered the bonus Martin cashed that same year, signed off with numbers that looked clean only because I made copies before he edited them. The papers were dry, but they burned hot in my hands. Monday, the roast began early. In the cafeteria, someone stood on a chair and shouted, "Who's ready for Richard's big comedy show?" The crowd chuckled. I walked past, tray steady, eyes forward. A coworker I once mentored leaned in with a smirk. "You'll laugh, right, Rich? You'll take it well?" I set my tray down and cut my sandwich in half. "I'll laugh," I said. My voice was quiet, calm. It made him uneasy. He turned back to his group too quickly. That night, in my office again, I opened the folder from my desk drawer, the one with old emails. There was Martin's message from years ago telling me to adjust numbers before sending them to the board. There was another, thanking me for shredding a draft contract after we cleaned it. He thought I shredded it. He never knew I ran 2 copies. I placed those pages on my desk beside the binder from the garage. Slowly, carefully, the pieces began to form a picture. A picture of a man who built his castle on lies, and who thought I, Richard, was too much of a fool to remember. As April 1st neared, the company decorated the conference hall. I walked in one afternoon to find balloons tied to chairs. A banner stretched across the stage. "Happy retirement, Richard. Thanks for the laughs." Thanks for the laughs. I stood under it while a group of junior staff tested the microphone. One of them mimicked my voice, a low drone. "Back in my day," the others laughed. I stayed quiet, but I looked at the banner, at the words, "Thanks for the laughs," and thought, they'll thank me for something else soon. The morning of April 1st came crisp and cool. I dressed in my best suit, the dark one with sharp lines. I pressed the tie smooth. My reflection in the mirror looked calm, almost too calm. In my briefcase, I placed the binder, the copies of the emails, the documents no one thought still existed. On top, I placed one sheet, a short statement typed in plain black letters. Just a few sentences. Enough to cut the room down to silence. As I left my house, the sun broke over the rooftops. It felt like the day itself knew. The office buzzed with expectation. People slapped me on the back, calling me the man of the hour. Some wore party hats. One carried a plastic rubber chicken, shaking it in my direction. I smiled politely. My briefcase felt heavy but right. By 6 o'clock, the hall was full. Music played from speakers. People held drinks. Martin stood near the front, grinning like a king at a jester's trial. The microphone squealed. "Ladies and gentlemen," the host said, "welcome to Richard Hale's farewell show." The crowd cheered. My name rolled through the air not as honor but as a punchline. I sat in the front row, my hands folded, my eyes on the stage, my briefcase at my feet. They thought I was the fool. They hadn't heard the announcement yet. Martin took the stage first. He always did. He liked to be the man with the microphone, the one steering the ship, even when he didn't know where the water was running. "Welcome, everyone." His voice boomed through the hall, too loud for the small room. "Tonight we celebrate our very own Richard Hale. 40 years of service, 4 decades of dedication, and, well, 4 decades of faxes." Laughter rippled through the audience. He held up a prop, an old fax machine someone had dragged from storage, dust still clinging to the edges. "We thought he'd like a keepsake. After all, he taught us all how to dial 9 for an outside line." The room roared. I sat still. My briefcase rested against my shin. My fingers tapped it lightly. Once, twice, 3 times. Martin grinned wider. "But don't worry, Rich. We know you're moving into the modern age. We even got you a brand new typewriter ribbon." He held up a small box, shaking it like a prize. The laughter doubled. A few people clapped. Someone shouted, "Don't forget the carbon paper." Another voice, "Bring out the flip phone." I smiled faintly, just enough for them to see, just enough for them to think I was playing along. Martin nodded at the HR rep. She shuffled on stage, carrying a slideshow remote. The lights dimmed and the projector lit up. Richard through the years. The first photo showed me in the 1980s. Hair thicker, shoulders squared. They had added cartoon sunglasses to my face and a caption, "Back when dinosaurs roamed." More laughter. The next slide was me at a desk, head down over papers. The caption read, "Trying to Google on paper." Slide after slide, everyone edited, everyone mocking, my career reduced to punchlines. Beside me, a young analyst leaned toward his girlfriend and whispered, "Man, can you imagine working here that long? I'd rather die." She giggled. My jaw stayed set, my eyes didn't move from the screen, but inside, a coil tightened. The slideshow ended with a meme, my face badly cropped onto a jester holding a rubber chicken. The caption, "Happy Fool's Day, Richard." The crowd erupted. Balloons dropped from the ceiling. Someone blew a party horn that squealed too sharp. Martin spread his arms like he had delivered a masterpiece. And now the floor is open. Anyone want to roast our man of the hour? Hands shot up. A manager from finance stood. Richard once told me spreadsheets were a fad. Guess who was wrong? Laughter. An engineer added, Richard said email would never replace paper memos. Bet he still checks his mailbox. Laughter again. Then, an intern. A boy, who had joined 6 months ago. He grinned wide. Richard once asked me how to save a file. I told him, click save, and he said, where's that? The room howled. I never asked him that. But the story wasn't the point. The laughter was. The roasts kept coming, dozens, some true, some not. All of them reducing me to a caricature. Kayla, the event planner, finally stepped up to calm the room. All right, let's not kill the man before his cake. Martin leaned into the microphone again. Richard, you're a legend, a fool's legend, but a legend nonetheless. Come up here and say a few words. Applause. Chants of, speech, speech! I rose slowly, my knees stiff but steady. The briefcase handle was firm in my grip. I walked to the stage, the lights blinding, the laughter still echoing in my ears. The microphone stood tall, silver shining. I adjusted it one notch down. My voice, when it came, was low and even. Thank you. A pause, murmurs. I've given 40 years to this company. You've given me 40 minutes of jokes. Balance is important. Uneasy chuckles. Martin smirked behind me, like he was waiting for me to break down, to stumble into their script. I didn't. Instead, I placed the briefcase on the podium and clicked it open. The sound echoed louder than I expected. A clean, sharp snap. The room leaned forward. But I didn't reveal anything yet. I only rested my hand on the papers inside, then closed the case again with a deliberate click. Not tonight, I said softly into the mic. Tonight is your laughter. Mine comes later. Gasps. Nervous shuffles. I stepped down from the stage. Left them with their balloons and their paper hats and their open mouths. Back in my seat, Paul from IT leaned over. He's one of the few who still remembers the early days. You've got something, don't you? He whispered. I didn't answer. My silence was enough. Paul nodded slowly, his lips curved into the faintest smile. The roast went on, but it lost some of its shine. People laughed too hard, too forced. They glanced at me now and then, at the closed briefcase by my leg. The cake arrived, a sheet cake frosted with clowns. Happy retirement, Richard the Fool. They sang, some off-key, some loud, just to cover the awkwardness. I cut the cake, handed out slices. My smile never slipped. But I saw Martin's eyes. Narrow, watchful. He sensed something. He didn't know what. That night, after the hall emptied and the confetti settled, I stayed behind. The janitor swept around me. I sat in the front row, the briefcase open on my lap. The documents glowed faintly in the dim light. Numbers, dates, signatures, proof. I whispered to myself, you chose April Fools. I'll show you the fool. The next week was filled with small humiliations, as if they couldn't stop themselves. Martin cornered me in the hallway. Good speech, Rich. Real suspenseful. Shame no one bought it. He patted my shoulder too hard. Enjoy the retirement home. In the cafeteria, someone had taped a paper hat to my chair, reserved for the office jester. On my desk, a rubber chicken sat with a note, "Don't forget your friend." Each insult folded neatly into the file I kept. Each joke was a line of rope they tied around themselves. By Wednesday, HR sent another email. Reminder, Richard's farewell week. Keep the laughs coming. Attached was a meme of an old man falling asleep at his desk. I printed it, slid it into the binder. Friday morning, Martin strutted into the office holding a newspaper. He slapped it on the break room table. See this? New contract, big win. We're expanding overseas. This is leadership, folks. He didn't notice me standing in the doorway. He didn't know I had the draft of that very contract in my briefcase. The one with dates changed. The one that showed he'd claimed victory months before the ink was dry. The kind of thing the board would not laugh at. That evening, Paul stopped by my office. He shut the door behind him. I don't know what you're planning, he said. But you've got that look. The same look you had in. '09, when you caught the CFO double billing." I looked at him, then at the folder on my desk. "Do you think they deserve to know?" Paul hesitated. Then he nodded. "They deserve the truth." I closed the folder. My hand rested on the cover like a gavel. The truth it is. On March 31st, the eve of my so-called farewell, I sat at home with the binders spread across my kitchen table. The clock ticked slow. The house was quiet. I sorted the papers one last time, emails in one stack, contracts in another, memos with signatures in a third. I rehearsed the words, I would say. Not many. Just enough to cut the noise out of the room. When midnight struck, I placed everything back in the briefcase, latched it shut. Tomorrow, April Fool's Day, the laughter would end, and the announcement would begin. The morning of April Fool's Day began with a sky that looked too clear, too empty, as if even the weather wanted to mock me with its brightness. I walked into the office through glass doors smudged with fingerprints and coffee stains, and every step echoed like I was walking toward a stage built for someone else's joke. Balloons bobbed from cubicle corners. Someone had taped streamers across the elevator doors, bright colors that sagged in the middle like tired smiles. A poster near the lobby read, "Happy retirement, Richard. Don't trip on your way out." They'd drawn a cartoon of me with a cane, stumbling, a little speech bubble saying, "Oops." A group of junior staffers stood nearby, grinning as I looked at it. One of them raised his phone, recording me. "Smile, Rich. Don't look so serious. It's just fun." Just fun. I kept walking. My briefcase swung at my side. At my desk, I found another gift. A rubber nose, bright red, resting on my chair. A note beside it. "Every clown needs his props." I held it for a moment, feeling the cheap plastic bend under my fingers. I placed it gently in my drawer, closed it, and sat down. Martin came striding past minutes later, wearing a crisp blue suit, a tie that screamed confidence. He leaned against my cubicle wall and clapped his hands together. "Big day, Rich. You ready to take your bow?" I looked up at him. His grin was all teeth. "Always ready," I said. He chuckled. "Good man. Just keep it light, all right? No speeches that drag. People came to laugh." He walked off, humming to himself. My hands curled into fists under the desk, then loosened again. By noon, the office was alive with cruel energy. People shouted jokes across aisles, some aimed at me, some not. But always, when I passed, the laughter grew sharper, like knives testing their edge. In the cafeteria, they had decorated a corner table with a banner, "Retirement Jester's Feast." Balloons shaped like question marks floated above it. Someone had cut out pictures of my face and taped them to clown bodies. I walked to the counter, ordered coffee, and carried it to a quiet table. The heat of the cup grounded me, but the voices around me carried on. "Do you think he knows it's all in good fun?" one whispered. "Of course not. He takes everything seriously. Bet he cries tonight." I sipped the coffee, bitter, burnt, perfect for the moment. When I left, I passed the bulletin board again. Someone had added another flyer. It read, "Vote for best joke about Richard." Names scrawled underneath, like a contest at a fair. They wanted me to be the entertainment, the object of their cleverness. They didn't realize they had already written the opening act of their own downfall. At 3 o'clock, HR called me in. The office was bland as always. White walls, a plant that hadn't been watered in weeks. Carol, the HR lead, smiled too wide. "Richard, just wanted to check in before tonight. Excited?" "Thrilled," I said evenly. She laughed, thinking I was joking. "Good, good. We've had such fun planning this. Remember, it's all about joy and laughter. People need to feel light these days. You'll play along, right?" "I'll play along," I said. "Perfect!" She tapped her keyboard, already moving on to the next task in her mind. I walked out, closing the door softly behind me. By 5 o'clock, the building buzzed like a hive. People carried drinks, chattered, laughed too loudly. The conference hall doors stood open, lights spilling out. Inside, I could see tables set with snacks, a cake on the far end, and balloons tied to the podium. The banner stretched across the back wall again. "Thanks for the laughs, Richard." The words glared at me. I stepped in. The air smelled of frosting and cheap wine. Music played faintly from speakers, upbeat, careless. When I walked through, Conversations hushed for a second. Dozens of eyes turned my way. Then the laughter picked up again, forced, buzzing, like they didn't want me to notice the pause. Martin appeared at my side, clapping my shoulder. "There he is, our guest of honor!" Applause rippled. Not warm applause, hollow, polite. I walked to the front row, set my briefcase at my feet, and sat. The program began. HR spoke first, rattling off my years of service, each line punctuated with a joke. Richard started here in 1983, before some of you were even born. Back when a mouse was just an animal. Laughter. Another speaker followed. Richard once told me the internet was a fad. Guess he was half right. It's a fad he never caught. More laughter. The microphone passed from hand to hand, stories twisted, exaggerated. Each one chipped away at me like carving wood. One man mimed using a cane, wobbling dramatically. Another pretended to fall asleep mid-sentence, drooping his head onto the mic. The crowd roared. I watched. I listened, my hands folded, my face calm. The briefcase against my leg was steady, its weight a reminder. When Martin finally took the mic, the room quieted. He was the star, the conductor. He held up his hands. Ladies and gentlemen, the moment we've all been waiting for, the official send-off of Richard Hale, the man, the myth, the office legend. Or should I say, the office fool. The crowd exploded. Balloons dropped from the ceiling again, confetti shot from cheap tubes. Martin grinned, basking. Now, Richard, come on up, say a few words. Give us one last laugh. Chants started. Speech, speech, speech. I rose slowly. My knees creaked, but my steps were firm. I walked to the stage, each footstep sinking the room deeper into silence. The microphone gleamed. I adjusted it down, the squeal of feedback slicing through the noise. I looked at the crowd, smiling faces, drinks in hand, eyes eager for me to stumble. I let the silence hang a little longer. Then I spoke. 40 years. My voice was steady. 40 years of work, 40 years of loyalty. And today, April 1st, you send me off as a fool. Some chuckles. Nervous. I let my gaze sweep the room. You think it's clever, you think it's just fun, but fools aren't always the ones on the stage. The chuckles faltered. Martin smirked behind me, whispering, "Don't drag it, Rich." I ignored him. My hand rested on the briefcase. I clicked it open. The sound echoed. People leaned forward. Inside, the papers waited. Stacks of proof, years of silence pressed into ink. But I didn't pull them out. Not yet. I closed the case again. The click rang louder this time. Not tonight, I said softly. Tonight you laugh. Tomorrow you listen. Gasps rippled. The crowd murmured. Someone shifted in their chair. I stepped back from the mic, leaving the words to settle like dust. Martin grabbed the microphone quickly. "Ladies and gentlemen, don't mind him. He's just teasing us one last time." Forced laughter bubbled. But it was thinner now, uneasy. I walked back to my seat, the briefcase beside me. The air in the room had changed. The jokes that followed fell flat. Laughter sounded brittle. Every eye flicked to me, to the case, then back to the stage. They didn't know what was inside. That was the point. After the event, people milled about awkwardly, cake smeared on plates, drinks half finished. Some avoided me, some approached, voices low. "Good one, Rich," one said nervously. You were kidding, right?" I smiled faintly. "You'll see." His face paled. He walked away quickly. Paul came over, his expression steady. He looked at the briefcase, then at me. "They're rattled." "They should be," I said. That night, alone in my office, I spread the papers on my desk. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Contracts, emails, numbers that didn't match. Proof of Martin's lies, built over decades. I sorted them into neat piles. My hands moved slow, precise. In the silence, I rehearsed what I would say. Not many words. Just enough. When the clock struck midnight, I closed the briefcase, latched it. April Fool's Day had given them their show. Now it was my turn. The morning after the party felt like a held breath. The building was quiet at 7. The halls smelled like cleaner and cold air. My shoes clicked on the tile. I liked that sound. It told me I was early, and early meant I had time. I set the briefcase on my desk and turned on the lamp. The bulb hummed. I lined up the papers edge to edge, the binder from 2007, the emails, the memos with wet signatures, not copied stamps. I made 3 neat stacks. I slid each stack into a blue folder. I wrote a name on each in block letters, not fancy, clear. I put one folder under my blotter. I placed one in my briefcase. I slipped one into a mailing envelope already stamped and addressed to the main office. Attention, the chair. If they shut off my mic later, the mail would still move. Paper has its own legs. At 8, Carol from HR knocked and came in without waiting. She carried a white box with a fake gold bow. "For you," she sang. "A little something from the team." I opened it, a cheap watch with a logo on the face. The second hand rubbed the minute hand every few ticks, and stopped, then twitched, then hopped. It made a faint scraping sound. The straps smelled like plastic. "It's lovely," I said. She beamed. "One more thing." She pulled a form from her folder and slid it across my desk. "Just the standard exit papers. Quick signatures, so we can close the file." The form had too many lines, too many words, too many "I agree" and "I confirm" boxes. At the top, a line said, "I have no claims and no concerns." The sentence sat there like a trap in dry leaves. I set the form aside. "I'll read it." She blinked. "Oh, sure, but we'd like to collect it before lunch. Martin asked me to make sure we keep today smooth." "Smooth is good," I said. "I'll bring it by." She stood, smile dimming. "Okay then, 6 o'clock, big room, don't be late." "I won't," I said. When she left, I put the form into the bottom drawer. I didn't forget it, I just put it where it couldn't make noise. At 9, the office woke up. Laughter came back to life in little bursts. Someone rolled a cart past my door with plastic cups and stacks of plates. Tape ripped off a rollout by the conference room. Balloons swayed in the AC. Paul poked his head in. "You look calm." "I am," I said. He walked in and shut the door with his heel. "Martin moved the all hands to 4. Says he has breaking news on the expansion." He made air quotes with 2 fingers. "Of course he does," I said. "He also told IT to lock the projector inputs except for his laptop." Paul paused. "So I unlocked them." I smiled. "Thank you." He lowered his voice more. "And he asked to cancel your 10-minute handover slot. Said we could." Folded into his talk. "How did that go?" I asked. Paul smiled with his eyes this time. Maya put it back. She told him, "You get your 10 and he gets what's left." Maya ran ops. She didn't talk much. When she did, rooms moved. "Good," I said. Paul glanced at the blue folder on my desk and then at the mailer. He didn't ask. He didn't need to. "If you need sound," he said, "use mic 2. It bypasses the little mixer at the podium. Cleaner line, harder to cut." "You think he'll try?" I asked. "I think he is who he is," Paul said, "and you are who you are." He left me with that. Before lunch, a janitor I'd known for years, Henry, stopped in with a trash bag and a nod. He was 60, small, fast with his hands. He said, "You good, Mr. Hale?" "I'm fine, Henry." He shifted his weight. "That man with the hair came in late last night." He meant Martin. "He had paper. He fed it to the red machine." He meant the shredder. He made a small whirring sound and a cut motion with his hand. "Lots?" I asked. "2 bags," he said. "But I have a rule." He tapped his temple. "Trash out, eyes up. I don't read, I don't touch, I clean." "It's a good rule," I said. He nodded once and rolled his cart out. On the way, he looked at my watch. "Nice," he said. "It stops," I said. He grinned. "Figures." At noon, Carol came back for the form. I handed it to her unsigned. "I'll bring it after the talk." She didn't like that. A fine crack showed in her smile. "Richard, it's routine. We can't proceed without it." "We're proceeding all day long," I said. "You'll have it." She left quicker than she came. I ate at my desk. Ham sandwich, apple, water from the cooler that always tasted like the filter needed help. I set a small index card next to my plate. On it I wrote 12 words. They were not pretty words. They were clear. They told a simple story in one line, then the next, then the last. I read them twice. I put the card in my pocket. At 1:30, I walked the hallway that led to the big room. Cold air moved in waves from the vents. On the wall, a corkboard held the latest Farewell Richard flyers. The new one said, "Best roast wins a gift card." The rules were printed under it. Step 1. Make us laugh. Step 2. Make it loud. Step 3. No crying. I pulled the thumbtack and took the flyer. I folded it clean and set it in my folder. I left the hole empty on the board. The cork showed through like a small wound. 2 interns were taping more streamers and talking about the buffet. They ordered ribs, one said. He'll get sauce on his tie. Good content, the other said, holding up his phone. I kept walking. At 2, I went to see Maya. Her office held neat stacks, and a plant that had somehow lived 5 years on low light and rare water. She didn't ask me to sit, she just pointed to the chair and kept typing until she finished a line. Then she folded her hands. "Is there a problem?" she asked. "No," I said. "I wanted to say thank you." "For what?" "For the 10 minutes." She nodded once. "I didn't give it to you. You earned it." "That's kind," I said. "It's true," she said. We sat with that for a moment. Then she glanced out the glass wall toward the hall. "They're fraying," she said. "Too much noise, not enough work." "I know," I said. "Do you have something?" Her eyes moved to my briefcase. "I have simple things," I said. She held my gaze. "Simple is heavy when the room is used to light." She turned back to her screen. 4 o'clock. Don't be late." She said it like Carol had, but the meaning was different. At 3, the company intranet posted a new banner. A cartoon of a man holding a rubber chicken and falling backward into a cake. The caption, "Tonight, the Fool's Finale." Paul sent me the screenshot. I saved it. At 3:30, I set 3 blue folders into a plain paper bag and wrote 3 names on the bag in thick marker. I handed the bag to the front desk guard. When the board members come in, I said, "Give them this, only them, no one else." He nodded like a man who had guarded more than doors. "I'll see it done." "Thank you," I said. He leaned closer. "I liked your training class back in 15, he said. "You made the old router make sense." "Old things can still work," I said. He smiled. "Tell them." At 10 to 4, I walked the back hall to the conference room. Lena from facilities stood by the sound rack, hair pulled into a tight bun, a pencil behind one ear. She looked up from the panel. "You're early," she said. "Early is best," I said. She flicked 2 switches. "Mic 2 is clean. Projector input's unlocked. If someone hits the big mute on the wall, I'll see it. I'll hit it back." "Why?" I asked. "You showed me how to reset the fire panel last year when it looped," she said. "You kept me from calling the fire department for nothing. I remember who helps." I nodded. "Thank you." She tested the mic. It hummed and then settled. "Say something." I leaned in. "Hello," I said. The sound came back honest, not tin. "It'll carry," she said. People began to file in. I stepped to the side wall and watched, the room filled with bodies and buzz. The board arrived, 3 faces lined with travel and long hours. The guard slipped each of them a blue folder with their names. They looked down, then up, then at me. They didn't open them, they tucked them under their chairs. Martin rolled in late, as always, with a woman from PR on his shoulder and a man with a camera behind him. He wore the same sharp blue suit. He looked at the crowd like a man checking his field before a show. He saw me near the wall and lifted his chin in a lazy nod. It said, "You will not matter." He took the podium. "Welcome, everyone," he boomed. "Big day." He pointed both thumbs at himself in a joke. "Big news." He talked for 20 minutes about vision, market, reach, and momentum. He clicked through slick slides. He made jokes at my expense along the way, soft jabs that got little laughs. He was careful now, not because he cared, because he was nervous. He showed an expansion timeline that didn't match the papers in my bag. I let the slide hang there in my head. Dates, claims, hollow words. He closed with, "And now, before cake, we have a few minutes for a handover note from Richard." Short and sweet, he promised. He laughed like he had told a big one. He stepped back, he glanced at Lena's rack, he looked for the mute, he put one hand on the podium like he owned it. I walked to the mic. The room dimmed a little as clouds slid across the sun and the lights took the strain. I took out my index card and set it on the wood. I set the briefcase on a chair, not the podium. My pockets felt light. My back felt straight. I looked out. Faces, cups, eyes. Some leaned forward. Some looked at their phones until they felt seen and tucked them away. "Thank you," I said. The mic carried it clean. "I have 10 minutes," I said. "I will use less." A titter, not laughter, nerves. "I will use 3 sentences," I said. I let that settle. The room shifted. Even the air had weight. "First," I said, 40 years, I did the work. Second," I said, "you called me a fool." I let my eyes pass over the banner that still hung in the back. "Thanks for the laughs." It looked small now. It looked like a costume at noon. Third, I said, "at the end of my 10, the board will open the blue folders under their chairs." A sound moved through the room. Not words. Wind inside 4 walls. Martin laughed too quick. "All right now," he said, stepping toward the mic. "Easy, Rich. We don't." Lena lifted a finger from the rack. Mic 2 stayed hot. His hand on the wall mute found nothing to do. I kept going. "That's it," I said. "That is my note." I stepped back from the mic and returned to my chair. I didn't touch the briefcase. I didn't make a show. I sat and folded my hands and looked straight ahead. The room didn't know what to do. A few clapped. It died fast. Someone coughed. Someone else whispered too loud, then turned red. The board chair cleared his throat. He was a small man with a neat tie and a habit of checking his watch even when he knew the time. He bent, reached under his chair, and pulled out the blue folder with his name. He looked at the other 2. They did the same. He opened his. Paper slid over paper. He read the first page. His face didn't change. He read the second. His jaw moved once. He read the third. He took a breath through his nose and set the packet face down on his knee. He did not close it. He did not look up right away. Martin saw the folders. He smiled too wide. "A little theater, folks." He held up his hands. "We appreciate the drama. Now cake." The board chair stood. He didn't speak to the room. He spoke to Martin. "Stay." The word cut through the hum like a wire. Everything in the room leaned toward that one word. Even the balloons seemed to turn their faces. Martin's smile shook. Only a touch. He laughed, a dry laugh. "We can talk after we celebrate." "We will talk now," the chair said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He looked at the other 2. "Rooms B and C," he said. 5 minutes. The second board member, a woman with short hair and sharp eyes, closed her folder and tucked it under her arm. The third checked his watch out of habit and then didn't move. They began to walk toward the side doors. Martin tried to get in front of them. "There's no need to." The chair held up one finger without looking at him. Martin stopped. His hand fell. He turned to me then. Not a smile now, not words. A line from his eyes to mine that said, "How did you do this?" I didn't give him anything back. They left the room. The side doors closed with a soft thud that sounded like a stamp. People exhaled. 100 small breaths let out at once. It made a low rush, like a tide going back. Lena turned the music down to nothing. The lights hummed. Paul's hands were flat on his knees like he was holding himself in his chair. Carol from HR looked around like she had lost a paper. The minutes stretched. 5 became 8. The door opened. The board walked back in. Faces set. The chair went to the mic. He didn't touch the banner. He didn't look at the cake. "Thank you for your patience," he said to the room. His voice was even. "We will take a short pause. Please remain available. We'll reconvene in 15. He looked at me and gave the smallest nod. It was not warm. It was not cold. It was a weight shifting from one place to another. He looked at Martin. "My office," he said. "Now." They left again. Martin followed. His jaw worked. The PR woman trailed and then peeled off at the door when the chair looked at her. She sat. Her phone stayed in her bag. The room broke into clusters. Quiet talk. Cups in hands that needed something to hold. Some tried jokes and stopped halfway through. Some stared at the floor. A young analyst with the too white smile said, too loud, "It's nothing," and then saw no one answer and shut his mouth. Paul leaned over. "You said 3 sentences," he whispered. "You forgot the 4th. "It's not mine to say," I said. He nodded. "Good." We waited. We did not eat cake. We did not clap. We waited, like you wait for a storm to finish crossing a road. At the 11-minute mark, Maya walked to the front. She didn't touch the mic. "Go back to your desks," she said. "Stay close. No posts. No photos. No calls. You'll be told when to return." People obeyed. They filed out. The room emptied like a slow drain. Only a few of us stayed. Me, Paul, Lena by the rack, the PR woman in her chair with her hands folded too tight, and Carol counting cups that didn't need counting. I stood and picked up the briefcase. It felt lighter now, not because it had fewer papers, because the room had more air. I walked the back hall to my office. The steps sounded softer on the carpet. In the distance, doors closed. Phones rang once and were picked up fast. At my desk, the watch in the box ticked and then stuck and then ticked again. The sound made me smile. It was honest about what it was. I sat. I pulled the exit form from the drawer. I took a pen. I wrote 2 words on the top line where it asked me to confirm I had no concerns. Not true. I set the pen down. I did not sign. I waited. Footsteps in the hall. Maya stood in my doorway. "You should come," she said. I stood. I took nothing with me. Not the case. Not even the card. I followed her down the hall. The boardroom door was open. The chair stood at the head of the table. Martin sat 2 seats down, a paper in front of him, a pen in his hand, his face pale around the mouth. The other 2 board members stood by the window, looking out at nothing. The chair looked at me. "Mr. Hale," he said, "thank you for your years here." He didn't say more. He didn't need to. He looked at the paper in front of Martin. He pointed to a line halfway down. Martin didn't move. "Now," the chair said. Martin signed. The pen scratched like a tiny saw. The chair nodded toward the door. "We will meet the staff in 20 minutes." Maya and I stepped out. In the hall, she stopped. "You changed the air," she said. "That's hard to do." "I put paper on wood," I said. "You did the rest." She almost smiled. "Get some water," she said. I went to the kitchen and filled a paper cup. The water was cold and steady. I drank it slow. The clock above the microwave said 5:10. The banner in the big room still hung. The clown on the cake still smiled. The frosting looked thick and wrong. Paul found me and leaned on the counter. "Heads are rolling," he said under his breath. "I don't want heads," I said. "I want truth." He nodded. "Sometimes they come together." We went back to the big room when Maya sent the message. People filed in again, quieter now. No balloons bobbed. No music played. The PR woman stood by the wall with her hands behind her back. Carol held her clipboard like a shield. The board took the front. The chair stepped to the mic. He didn't use a joke. "Thank you," he said. "We will keep this short." He glanced at me. "Mr. Hale, thank you for your service." "Effective immediately," he said to the room, "there will be leadership changes. We will share details with each team." "No names. Not yet." It was enough. He paused. "Mr. Hale asked for 10 minutes today. He used less. We will not take more from you. Thank you." He stepped back. He did not look at Martin. He didn't have to. The room didn't clap. They didn't know if they should. And Paul clapped once. Then twice. It spread. Not a roar. Not fake. A clean sound. Hands on hands. Not for a cake. Not for a joke. For a turn. I didn't bow. I didn't wave. I stood. I took one breath. I walked out of the light and into the hall. Behind me, voices rose and fell. Plans began. People moved. The machine that had been fed jokes all week began to eat work again. At my desk, the exit form waited. I picked it up. I took a black marker and drew one line through the sentence that wasn't true. I wrote in 2 new lines in my neat print. "I have concerns. I raised them. I will keep a copy." I put the form in an envelope and sealed it. I wrote Carol's name on the front. I carried it to HR and set it on her desk. She looked up, eyes wide, and then down at the envelope. She didn't touch it. "Thank you," she said, small. I left the watch in its box on my chair. I took my old stapler. It had a scratch on the side from 1994 when I dropped it. It fit my hand. I slid it into my briefcase. That was all I took. I rode the elevator down. The doors opened to the lobby. The guard nodded and pointed to the mail slot. "It'll go out at 6, he said. "Perfect," I said. The sun had slid behind the building across the street. The glass front glowed with the last light. I stood there for a moment and let it touch my face. I walked to my truck. The engine turned over on the first try, the way it always did when I kept it clean and fed. I drove home on roads I knew with my eyes closed. I kept them open anyway. At home, I set a pot of water on the stove. It took its time. The surface trembled, then boiled. I turned the flame off and poured. I sat down and let the heat from the mug warm my fingers. The day had been long. The rope held. The house was quiet. The clock ticked. A car passed outside and faded. My hands were steady. The simple things were still simple. And under all that plain, steady motion, a small beat kept time. Not anger. Not glee. Something older. Something patient. A beat that said, "Wait. There will be one more moment. When it comes, it will be quiet. And when it is quiet, you will say the last thing you saved." I put my cup down. The ring it left on the wood looked like a small moon. The mark would fade. Some don't. I could live with both. The days after the meeting stretched long and thin. People moved differently in the hallways now. Laughter had lost its sharp edge. It came softer, quick, with eyes glancing over shoulders. When I walked past, voices dipped. Papers rustled louder. Phones lit up in hands that pretended not to scroll. Martin was not at his desk. His door stayed closed, blinds pulled. The brass nameplate that once gleamed looked dull under dust. Rumors flitted like gnats. Some said he was in talks with the board. Some said he had been asked to take personal time. No one said his name too loudly. Carol from HR carried herself like a woman waiting for thunder. She walked quick, clipped, her shoes snapping on the tile. Every time she saw me, her smile came late and left early. Paul kept his head down in IT, but his messages came, short, simple notes. Folders read, numbers checked. No holes. Then another, backup stored, not just yours. He was laying rope of his own. At lunch, I took my sandwich to the same quiet table. The cafeteria chatter rose and fell, but no jokes carried my name anymore. Still, I could feel eyes slide across me. Not cruel now. Cautious. Maya found me there on Wednesday. She set her tray down without asking. She ate in silence for a while. The clink of her fork on the plate matched the clock's tick. Finally, she spoke. "They're waiting." "For what?" I asked. "For the end of the story," she said. I sipped water. "So am I." She nodded once. "Board meets again Friday. Be there." "I'm not on the agenda." "You are," she said, "whether they wrote your name or not." She finished her meal, stacked her tray, and left without another word. Friday came with a gray sky and a steady rain that slicked the sidewalks. The conference room smelled of damp coats and coffee. The board sat at the far end, folders closed but near. Martin was there too, pale, drawn, a shadow of his grin. He avoided my eyes, but his fingers drummed on the table as if trying to tap his way back into control. The chair began with numbers, reports, budgets. The words slid by like stones skipping water. Then he closed his binder and looked straight at me. "Mr. Hale," he said, "do you have anything further?" The room shifted. Dozens of eyes turned. Breath held. I rose slowly. My knees ached, but my back stayed straight. I placed my hand on the briefcase, still with me like a second heart. "I do," I said. Martin shifted in his chair, lips parting as if to cut me off. The chair raised one finger without looking at him. Silence dropped heavy. I set the briefcase on the table, clicked it open, papers stacked clean, folders labeled in black marker. I slid one across to the chair, one to the woman with sharp eyes, one to the third member. "This," I said, "is what you missed while you were laughing." Pages turned, eyes scanned, the chair's brow furrowed, the woman's lips pressed thin, the third man's jaw tightened. Martin's drumming stopped. The chair looked up at him. "Do you deny these?" Martin's voice cracked. "They're old, out of context, everyone." "Enough," the chair said. The word landed like a hammer. He turned back to me. "And you, Mr. Hale, what do you want?" The room leaned in, the air stilled, even the rain outside seemed to pause. I let the silence stretch until it held its own weight. Then I spoke. "Not money, not titles, not applause. I want truth on record. I want the fool to be the right man." The chair nodded once, slow. "You have it." He tapped the table, meeting adjourned. Martin rose too fast, knocking his chair back. His mouth opened, but no sound came. The board walked out, folders in hand, not waiting for him. I gathered my briefcase, closed it with a soft click, and left the room. The building felt different after that, quieter, more careful. Some avoided me still, but others met my eyes now. Nods came where once there were smirks. Paul clasped my shoulder in the hall and said nothing. He didn't need to. When I reached my office, the watch in its box still sat on the desk, hands stuck in the same place. I left it there. I didn't need to fix it. Some things stop on purpose. That evening, I turned off my lamp, locked my briefcase, and walked out into the rain. The air smelled clean. The streetlights glowed soft on wet pavement. At home, I hung my coat, set water to boil, and listened to the steady drip of rain against the window. The rope had held. The beat was quiet now. Not gone, just quiet. The fool they had named had given them their show, but the last laugh was mine. The board's promise was not empty. By Monday, the building hummed with rumors. Doors shut. Conversations stopped when I passed. Carol walked briskly, clutching a folder tight to her chest. She didn't meet my eyes. At noon, an email went out. Leadership transition effective immediately. It named 3 people stepping into interim roles. Martin's name was not on the list. His office was cleared before the day ended. The blinds opened at last, showing nothing but a bare desk and a chair pushed in too neatly. Some whispered he had resigned. Others said he had been invited to. I didn't care which. What mattered was that his nameplate was gone. At 4, the board called everyone to the conference hall again. No balloons this time, no cake, no jokes. Just rows of chairs, and a podium stripped bare. The chair stood straight, his hands folded in front of him. "This company," he said, "will not build on lies. We have made corrections. We thank Mr. Hale for his decades of service, and we regret the send-off he was given." He paused. His eyes swept the room. A fool's day, a fool's joke. We were the fools. The words hung there. No one laughed. No one dared. He gestured toward me. "Mr. Hale, would you like to say a word?" I stood, but I didn't go to the mic. I spoke from where I was, my voice even. "No jokes," I said. "No roast, no props. Just this. Truth weighs more than laughter, and it always lasts longer." Silence. A deep, honest silence. I sat back down. The chair nodded once and closed the meeting. That night, at home, I boiled water the way I always did. The steam curled into the air. I poured, sat, let the cup warm my fingers. Outside, rain tapped steady on the glass. The house smelled of wood and quiet. The watch they had given me sat on the counter. Its hands were frozen still. I left it that way, a reminder that some gifts are hollow. But the stapler in my briefcase, scratched and worn, was real. It had held papers together when people tried to pull them apart. That was enough. I sipped my tea. The day had been plain. True, the rope had held. And in the quiet, I let the truth settle. They had named me the fool, but the last laugh, the only laugh that mattered, was mine.
If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe and join Taste of Revenge family, and share your impressions of the story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on one of the boxes on the right. Thank you for watching to the end.